Hey there, what's up? My name is Oliver, and today we're going to be building and deploying a modern AI powered software as a service app for customer engagement. We're going to be using Next.js, Framer TailwindCSS, Shad CDN, and other modern web development technologies. This project is great for developers who want to improve their skills in building sleek UIs with smooth animations that stand out from the crowd, perform really well, and really just get the attention of interviewers and clients. And we can see that right here. We have this beautiful hero section, and we have this fade in animation right here. I really just got this from ShadCDN's website, but yeah, we have a really cool CTA button right here. We have this cool Navbar effect. We have this really nice how it works section, followed by a features section. And then we have this pricing section. We have this really cool bento box design, and I think that's just a testament to, the fact that we're sticking to modern web design trends here. And we have this cool effect. This is one of my favorite parts of the application. And then we have this CTA section with this really cool animation effect. And then we have a newsletter and a footer. And this is all fully responsive. This would be a tablet, and as you can see, everything is fully responsive, 100%. This is also a mobile device. It's the same story. Everything is fully responsive. So that's a quick overview of the application. And without wasting any time, let's get to building it. I created a GitHub repository with all of the assets and starter files that you're going to need to build this application from start to finish. And we're going to go ahead and clone that right now. So I will copy the HTTPS URL and I'm going to open up a terminal. I'm currently in my desktop folder and I'll make this bigger. Then I'm going to clone the repository using this command. And this is simply going to clone the repository into my local machine, and we're just going to wait for it to finish. And now we see that it's done. And if I run this command, we can see that we have the Nexa project within our desktop folder. The next thing we want to make sure of is that we have the correct Node.js version, and we can check that using this command. Now I'm running version 20, but ideally anything above version 18 should be just fine. And yeah, next thing we're going to do is install the dependencies for this application. And first I'm going to clear my terminal and I will cd into the project. And now we are inside of the project. We can install these dependencies using npm or yarn or pnpm, but for this project, I'm going to be using npm, and I'm just going to do that. Now it's going to install all of the necessary dependencies for this application to run, and I will give you a quick rundown of the starter project and how we can proceed. Now I'm going to open up a VS Code window and the Finder window, and I will go into my desktop folder here. And I'm just going to drag this in. And now we have the full starter project here on VS Code. Now we have the full starter project here on VS Code. And in the app folder, this is essentially the main folder of the application. And in here we have a content. It's essentially a group layout, and I just named it content. But in here we have a layout file and a page, which is essentially just a home screen. In the components, we just have building blocks for the application, and in here we have all of the icons that we're going to need in SVG format. In here we have a footer and a navbar, and they're all empty because we're going to build them from scratch. And in here, we have multiple components from Shad CDN and Magic UI that we're going to be using throughout the application. In the constants folder, we just have our text and arrays and data that we're going to use throughout the application. In here, we just have a utility function that allows us to use dynamic Tailwind classes without having any trouble. And in the public folder, we just have assets and some icons. And in here, we have all of the global styles that we are going to be using for the application. So that's a quick rundown of the whole thing. And the next thing we want to do is make sure that this application actually works. So I'm going to clear my terminal again, and I'm going to start the server using this command. And this is going to start the server, and we should be able to see it now in our browser. And now we have our navbar, we have our home page, we have our footer, and this just means that the application does work. And the next thing we are going to do now is start building all of these components from scratch, starting with the navbar. So the first thing we're going to build is going to be the navbar here, and here's how we're going to do it. So you want to come into your components folder and your navigation folder, and then we'll come in here, and here we have the bare navbar. And if I make a change here, you should see it instantly. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch this to, actually I'm going to remove all of this, and I'm going to return header. This is essentially just, the regular HTML header, and I'm just going to go ahead and style it a bit. Okay, so I'll give it a padding of 4. I think this should work on the x-axis. Give it a height of 14. 14 is about 56 pixels. Should be good. I'll make this sticky, and sticky is kind of, I made a mistake here. H14. Sticky is kind of like it's kind of like a mix between fixed and absolute, I think. And we're going to see that in action in a bit, very shortly. So next thing I'm going to do is give it a top of 0, and set x also 0. Full width, obviously, and this will allow us to, make things more responsive. I'm just going to give this G of background. I think I'm going to make this is essentially like 40% opacity, and it's so we can have a very cool, need to close this out again. You're going to see that in a bit. I will also give it a backdrop blur 0. No, this should be LG. Get a border bottom, and also this, and this is kind of like I'm extending this in my Tailwind config file, so you should have all of that in the startup project. And I'll give this a Z index of 50, and this is just so it can appear above other stuff. Next, I'm just going to create a container, item center, justify items between, and I'll give this a full width, which should be this. Sorry, I meant full height. I'll give this a full height, and that should be 56 pixels. And moving forward, I'll give it a margin of auto on the x-axis. And on medium devices, I'm just going to give it a max width of 100 this should work. Yeah, this should be okay for larger devices. Next thing I'm going to do is open yet another container, and I'll just get this flex and make it item start. And in here, we're going to add our logo, and I like to wrap this in a link that just points to, you know, the home page, and I'll show you that in a bit. So the href will, sorry about that. The href here is just going to point to, you know, root, and yeah, that's how that's going to work. And this is just so that whenever you click on the logo or the icon, you know, it just brings you back to the home page. And I think that's always a really cool feature to have. I'm just going to go ahead and style this. I think padding, a general padding of 2 should work well for this. And here we are, making progress. Okay, so now we're about to add the logo, and I'm just going to import icons, and icons is coming from, it's a component and it's all here. We're just importing the logo from here, which is this SVG file. We're essentially importing all of this. So we're just going to import this, and I'll call this icons.logo, and this should work. And I'm just going to give it a class name. This is about 32 pixels, which I think is cool for logo. And I'll do this, and yeah, here we have our logo. And yeah, now we have our logo. I'm just going to add the text beside the logo, and here's how we'll do that. I'm just going to create the span, and I'll give this large text, and the font weight, I'm just going to give this a medium. So yeah, and I'll just call this, okay, this is a bit too close. So instead of this padding, I'm just going to, and here we have this. Here we have this. And as you can see, it is fully responsive as we go. So the next thing we're going to do is open up another container here, but this time it will be a nav container, and I'm just going to create essentially a bunch of links here, and you're going to see that in a bit. But the goal or the plan here is kind of to make them visible on larger devices, but hide them on mobile devices, because you don't want to see a bunch of links here on your mobile phone. It would be messy. So I'll make this hidden, and I'm just going to make this hidden on smaller devices, and on medium devices, that's I believe tablets and above, this is just going to be flex. And I'll give it a position of absolute, give it a left of 50% should do it. I'll also give it a top of 50%. I think that should work. Just going to translate. Just going to give it this style. I always forget to close this out. This is much better. And I'm just going to give it this style essentially, and it's just going to move it along the x-axis by half of its width. And I'm going to do that on the same, I'm going to do the same thing for the y-axis. And I'm just going to pass this in. This is what essentially enables all of these guys to work. And in here, I'm just going to create a list. I'm just going to create the list, and in this list, I'm just going to style the container first. Just going to style the container first. Okay, no errors so far. I'm going to create my first list item, and I'm just going to make this small text for now, and I'll call this pricing. Okay, here we have it. I would like to style this a bit more. So and now when you hover over this, the color changes when you hover over it, and that's essentially what I wanted to do. I think that's always a cool feature to have. So I'm going to wrap this in a link as well. And for now, I'm just going to pass it href of root, because quite frankly, I don't know what to put there. And since we're just going to be building out the UI, if you'd like me to build a full stack project, maybe with a different app, I think you could just leave that in the comments, and I'd be happy to make that video. And now it's a link, and you can see that the cursor changes to a pointer when you hover over it. That was what I just wanted to achieve. I'm just going to duplicate this 3 times and give this about features blog. And in the future, we're going to change these hrefs. So I'm just going to do that in a bit. But for now, just going to leave them here. And now we have multiple links to different parts of our application. The last thing I want to do would be to add some kind of button to sign in and log in, ideally. And okay, let's do that. Kind of building this from scratch. I have the website on a different screen, and I'm just kind of looking at it and building. So give this class name of flex. I really like flexbox. I don't like using block. Give this gap 4, and in here I'm just going to throw in another link. I will just pass this root for now, and in here I'm going to just have a sign in button, and let me style this a bit. So for the classes, we're going to be using Tailwind's. Essentially, we're going to be using dynamic classes for this, and here's how we'll do it. Button variant, and in here, I'm just going to pass the size, and the size is going to be so these are all specified in. Oh, what's wrong with this? Am I missing something? Oh, I've not imported this. I'm just going to import it here, and Oh, it's still not okay. Oh, I think I get it now. This should be regular parentheses. Okay. Okay, that works. And now if we save this, we have a neat sign in button here, and it's kind of like the ghost variant essentially is what allows it to have this background color. And I think it's a cool name. So I'm going to build out a login button, sorry, a sign up button as well. And you know what? I'm just going to copy this, duplicate it. And in here, it's still going to be this href for now. And I'm not going to add a variant to this. I'm going to give it a class name instead. In here, I'm just going to say hidden, and it's going to be hidden and flex on larger devices. And you're going to see this in a bit. So essentially, it's a bigger button. So I'd like to just hide it on smaller devices. So here's what we have, and this is our nav bar. As you can see, it's fully responsive, and yeah, I think we're done with this. Next bit would be to move on to the home page. So now that we have the nav bar done, we're going to go ahead and build out our home page. But before we do that, there's a few components that we need. I like to create a wrapper around most of my components. So I like to come in here. I'm just going to open this up, and I'm going to call this wrapper. And in here, all I'm going to do is close this out first. And I'm just going to use this shortcut. I'll make this and this. Put them in the proper case. And before I start building anything, I'm just going to define the props. And in here, I'm just going to define a class name so that we can style it wherever we use it if we want. And oh, it should be like this. And children, that shouldn't be optional. Going to choose React Node, and these would essentially be what would be contained in the wrapper. So the children are what the wrapper would be wrapping over. So yeah, moving forward, I'm just going to declare this as a React functional component and pass that to it. And in here should allow us to specify class name and children. Now we can go ahead and build. And first thing I'm going to do is create a container, and I will call this, I'm just going to use the cn function from our utils, and this is just a function that allows us to use dynamic Tailwind classes without problems. So I can explain this in a later video. I could make a video about this, but essentially it just allows you to join Tailwind classes and use dynamic classes on the fly without having a lot of problems. So I'm just going to use this here, and first I'll specify some styles that we would need everywhere, like full height, margin of auto on the x-axis, full width. I think that's always needed. A max width of the screen, just so nothing breaks out. I'll just give this XL, and I'll give it a padding of 4 on the horizontal axis, and on medium, and larger devices, I think 20 would be fine. 20 seems cool. And then after this, I'm just going to go ahead and pass the class name here, and that's how it's dynamic. It just allows us to join our class name prop with all of this here, and it wouldn't cause any problems for us. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and add children, and we're done with this. So far, so good. The next thing I'm going to build out is a container, and a container would essentially be, let's call it an animated container. It's essentially a div. I'm just going to show you. So in here, we're going to go ahead and build out our container. And once again, I'm just going to declare the props, and we're going to have class names, a string, children. This shouldn't be optional. And this would be, these would be React nodes, a delay. And what the delay does, essentially, what the delay would do would be, it just sets a delay for when things render, and we're going to see that in action in a bit. And I'm just going to set this should be a number ideally, and it would be a number in seconds. And I'm also going to specify, oh, made a mistake here, reverse. And a quick run through of these props. Essentially, the class name container would just be any additional CSS classes or Tailwind classes that we want to add to style this container. The delay essentially sets a delay for when the animation starts, and we're going to set this in a bit, and we'll also see it in action. And the reverse prop really just controls the direction of the animation when it renders. And we're going to see all of these in action very shortly. So in here, I'm going to do this again. And I'll just clear this as props. This is going to be a long type. Oh, say class name, children, say delay, and finally reverse. And we should be good to go. Close this out again so we can get some more space. And in here, I'm just going to import motion from Framer Motion, and I'll make this a motion.div, which is essentially just an animated container for our components. And I'm going to style this. In here, I'm just going to use the cn utility function again. And I'm just going to use it to essentially patch this class name prop along with whatever I add here. So I'm going to give this full width and full height. And I'm just going to patch it along with this class name prop. And we're going to see that in action very shortly. Now, for the initial, essentially, this just sets the starting animation state, when opacity is 0 and it's rendering for the first time. We're just trying to set the initial state of everything. And I'm just going to set the opacity to 0 initially. And for the y-axis, if reverse is true, And I'll just set this to -20, which would essentially change the animation direction. And we'll see that very shortly. Otherwise, 20, I'm just going to set it to 20. Then I'm just going to add a while in view. And when it's in view, I'm just going to specify opacity to be 1 and Y would be 0 in this case. Then the next thing we want to specify here, I'm just going to clean this up. Cool, this looks better. I'm just going to set the viewport, and in the viewport, I'm just going to set ones to false. And for the transition, now I'm just going to pass the delay prop to it and set the duration to 0.4 and set the ease to easing out. And then in here, I'm just going to pass children. Now, what all of this does essentially, initial sets the starting animation state and it just makes it invisible initially. That's what this does. And Y essentially specifies the vertical position offset. Okay, now if reverse is true, the animation is going to start from -20, which is upwards. We're going to see that in a bit. Now, while in view, this essentially, what this does is it defines the target animation state when the component enters the viewport. And I'm just going to set the opacity to 1 and set Y to 0. The viewport just controls the viewport settings for the animation, and I've just set ones to false, and that just means that the animation is going to, re-render whenever it comes back into view. So yeah, that's mostly it. For the transition, it just specifies how the animation behaves. It's nothing much, just a duration, easing out, and a delay. So it's nothing fancy, I promise. So now we are ready to build out our home screen, and we're going to finally come in here, and now we're ready to build our home screen. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of all of this. I don't think we're going to use that. And now we have an empty home page, and we're going to go ahead and start building that from scratch. Actually, this should be a section, ideally, just for semantics. And I'll give this full width, make this relative, make it the flex box. Okay, so these should be the general styles for the section, and that should give it some good spacing out here. And now we're going to go ahead and use our wrapper components, brought it in here. It shows these squiggly lines because it doesn't have any children just yet, but we're going to give that to it. First is going to be a div container, and I'm going to make this absolute, pass it an inset of 0. It's going to say on dark mode, it should have background of, it's essentially a gradient. I'm just going to copy this. And now we're going to have a background of a gradient, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it in here. And what this is essentially a gradient, but it's a lot of text. Oh, I'm just going to spare you all of that. And now that we have that out of the way, I'm just going to specify z index of -10 and a height of 150 vertical height. And we're going to see this in action very shortly. The next thing we're going to use here will be our container. We're just going to import it from here. Now it's also a bit upset because it also has no children. So in here, I'm going to do this. I'll give this flex. I'll also align the items to the center, as well as justify the items to the center. Give it padding on the y-axis of 20, which is essentially like 80 pixels. And I'll just give this full height. Couldn't find the modules. Oh, I think TypeScript is upset. Could be the cause of this. So we have this error, and I don't know what's causing it. I'm just going to add a use client tag here and see if that fixes it. Oh, and it does. It does. So now we have our background and we can see that everything looks good. I don't know what this is. But now we can see that everything looks good. And now we have this grid gradient, and that's essentially what this is doing. It's essentially just this gradient. It's a lot of stuff. So now we have our grid gradient, and there's going to be full code in the description for you. So the next thing I'm going to do here is create a button, and so the next thing I'm going to do here is create a button, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it in here like this. I'm just going to do this and import this icon from Lucid. And now we should have this cool button right here. Now the footer is kind of in the way, so I'm just going to come back to my layout and comment it out for now, just so we have our cool little button. Okay, so now we have our button, and it's currently here right now because we aligned everything to the center and we've not added a bunch of text. I'm just going to go ahead and add those now. So right under this button, I'm going to create a new container, and I will hide this on mobile devices, but on larger devices, I'm just going to give it flex. I'll make this relative. I'll align the items to the center, and I'll give it a margin on the top of 8, which is 32 pixels. And if you hover over it here, you can see it. And I'm using the official Tailwind extension. You could just go ahead and download it from your extensions tab here and check out Tailwind. You could just Google Tailwind and you should see it. Yep. Here's the one I'm using right here by Tailwind Labs, and it's really cool. So I'll close this out again and we can carry on. I'm going to give this a max width of 3XL and a regular width of 11 over 12, and that should be about 91%. Cool. And on medium devices, I'm just going to give it full width, and we're going to see that in action in a bit. In here, we're going to write our first text, which will be H1, and I will give it, just going to clean this up, move this up here so we can all see it. And this is going to be the big text, the main text. So I'll give it this text size. And that was going to be for mobile devices. On larger devices, on tablets, I'm just going to give it a size of 6XL. And on larger devices, I'm just going to give it 6XL for now. We could change that in a bit. And I'm just going to make this leading snug, and that just sets a line height for the text. For the font, it's going to be semi-bold. And ideally, we want to align this text to the center. So just going to do this, give it clip text. Give a gradient. Essentially, it's just a gradient. And now I'm going to specify the colors. This is really going to be minor, but you're going to see it in action in a bit. Yep, here we go. And now in this text, I'm going to write out our main text. Okay, and now we have this, and this is essentially what the gradient does. I'm not really happy with this. Maybe I should have aligned everything to start first, not center. I really love to see what I'm building when I'm building it. So maybe I should just align the items to, oh, that didn't do it. Yep. And now we have our text here. As you can see, I think it's a bit big. So I'm just going to make it smaller on larger devices. And I can do that here. Oh, it's the wrong one. Okay, I think this looks a lot better. It just fits the screen a lot better. And on medium devices, I think I'm just going to set that to this as well. Then I'm going to do something about mobile devices. So yeah, we're making good progress. Now I'm just going to specify a subtitle, and I'm going to style it like this. And this would just really carry some information or some more context as to what the product is about. And actually, maybe I should give it a size first. Okay, and I'm just going to give it a margin top of 6. And also align it to the center, just like its big brother there. Now we have our text and we've styled it. I'm just going to paste in some text here for the subtitle. This, I'm just going to fix this. I think I forgot to specify the direction. So I'm just going to specify the flex direction as column. And now we have this. And here we have a cool animated button and our text and this. The next thing that we want to do is add a button for users to get started. And I'm just going to paste this in. I'll save this. And now we have a button that essentially acts as a CTA button. And if I make this larger, we can see that this button shows up. And if I make it smaller, then it doesn't show up. And this is because the button is hidden on smaller devices and on larger devices, it's set to flex. Now we want to set up our image, and here's how we're going to do this. So the first thing that we want to do to set up the image, we're just going to come down here. We're just going to come down here and create another container. Make this relative, flex, align items to the center. I'll give it a padding on the y-axis of 10 on smaller devices, and on medium devices, this is going to be 20. And this is 40 pixels on smaller devices and 80 pixels on larger devices. And I'm just going to pass this a full width. I don't think I did that. So I'm going to create another container inside of it. And this one will be absolute. It's just going to take a position of absolute. And I'm just going to give it a top of 50%. Also left of 50%. A Z index of -10. And then I'm just going to make this a gradient background. And then I'll pass a width of 3/4. Translate X of 1/2. It's essentially 50%. I keep saying it as 1/2. And pass it this. I'll pass it the bar property. And in here, I'm just going to give it 10 rem, and we're going to see this in action very shortly. This is essentially going to be a background, and it's going to be this gradient background here, as you can see. Now, the next thing we're going to do is set up a container for our hero image, and we're going to come below this and create another container. And in that container, we're going to have this style, which is essentially a margin of -8px, -8 pixels. I'll give this border radius of XL. I think that's about 12 pixels. Yeah, that should be cool. I'll give it a padding of 2. ring 1, also this. And we're going to see all of these, in action very shortly. Oh, I made a mistake here. Just going to specify color of this ring. Opacity should be 20. That should work. Just going to do this on larger devices. And also on larger devices, I'm going to make the border radius a bit rounder. And then I'm going to specify some kind of background. 50 might be overkill, but let's see how that works. We're going to say backdrop blur of 3XL. See how that goes. Then now that we have our container, if we save this, we can see that we still have the gradient and nothing has happened just yet. Let's go ahead and add our image. And in here, I'm just going to use the optimized image from Next.js. And I'll pass a source. And this would be assets. Just going to do this and then go ahead and add an alt tag. Otherwise, TypeScript would be angry. Call that. Give it a width of, I think this should be fine. Also height. Oh, I made a mistake here. It's not. Okay, that fixed it. And then for the quality, I'm just going to specify 100 because we really want this to pop. And for the class name, I'm going to do this. I'm just specifying border radiuses for smaller devices and larger devices. And I'm going to give it a background of, no, need to move this a bit. Foreground, and I'm just going to make it with an opacity of 10, and that should be like very blurred out. I'll give it a shadow, give it a ring, kind of specify this border. Now let's see if this works. And it does. And now we have this, but it's not, this isn't cool just yet. And that's because we changed something back here so we could see our items. I can't remember where I changed that. Trying to find it. I think it was here. Okay, so I fixed it, and essentially the problem was that I was so clumsy and I took all of this and put it inside of this container here. So I had all of this code in here and it kind of just broke things. So now we have our project and we have our home screen. You can see we have a beautiful button here. We have our hero text and we have this beautiful dashboard that just showcases what we're trying to do. And if we refresh this, we can see that everything is animated, and this is because of the container that we're using. So now we have it, and next thing we're going to do, actually, the next thing I would like to do is make this into a component of its own. So I'm just going to copy all of this out, and in the components, I'm just going to create a file, and in the components, I'm going to create the file, and I'm just going to call this hero.tsx, and I'll use this. And in here, I'm just going to paste all of this code, and I will import all the necessary things that are needed. Now we just have to import the wrapper and the container and this icon here. And I'm just going to go back to my page, and I will make this, just going to import the new component. And as you can see, we have the exact same results, but this is much cleaner for the home page. I'm just going to delete all of these. Just going to delete all of these and save it again. And now we see that we have our beautiful page here, and the code is clean. So next thing we want to do is build out some kind of features component or a how it works component, and that would just let us portray or show the users what this SaaS does, and really just convey the message of the entire application. So I think I'm going to call it just that. So I will call it how it works, and I'll just copy this. I'll go to my components, and in here I'll just call this how it works.tsx. I'll use this shortcut, and I'll just rename everything here, and then I'll come back here and simply import it, and I'll close this out. And now you can see that we have our component right here. Okay, so let's get to it. So the first thing we want to do is use our wrapper components, and I'm just going to wrap this in the wrapper. We won't be needing this anymore. So to style our wrapper, I'll just use this, and I think TypeScript is upset because there's no children just yet. So I will pass it the container component that we built earlier. And I think it's also angry for the same reason. I'll just pass it to div. Yeah, that should fix things. Now back to styling the wrapper. I'll just give it flexbox, item center, justify content center, padding on the y-axis of 12, and position relative. And yeah, this is pretty much standard. This is going to center everything, nicely, and relative just allows us, it just makes it easier for us to use absolute styling inside of it. We will not be styling the container. I don't think there's any need to style it really. So, yep. So in here, we're just going to start styling this div, and I'll give it a max width of medium, margin on the x-axis of auto. I'll align the text to the start on smaller devices, and on larger devices, I'll make the text, aligned to the center. And In here, I'm just going to use some kind of badge. I think I have a component for that. Yep, section badge. And ideally, this would need a title. Yep, title. And the title would be how it works. Yep. And now we see it here, how it works. Then moving forward, I'm just going to have H2 here with the class name. This is going to be a large text. Make this 3XL, and on larger devices 4XL. Spelled that correctly, I think. Yep. All right. So moving forward, font is going to be semi-bold, and this will have a margin top of 6. So like 24 pixels. Yeah, correct. And now I have my H2 tag, and in here I'm just going to paste in some text. The modern service platform to meet your customers' needs. And now we have it right here. And then the next thing I want to do, I think this would be cooler if this was smaller. Maybe I'll change it later. So yeah, next thing I want to do is just have a B tag, and in here I'm just going to give it the style text muted foreground, and in here I'll just type in this text. And this would essentially be a header, and now we can see that text resizes as we move it along. I think this is a bit too close. I'll just margin top of 6. Yeah, I think this is better. So yep, I'll come back here. I think I'm just going to move this back to 4XL. Okay. So this would essentially be the top part, and I'm just going to leave a comment here for that. Just say header area, and below this we want to set up another container, and in this container we would have essentially all the stuff that we want to render. And I think I'd rather just show you. This would be flex direction of column, items, center, justify center, padding on the y-axis of 10, so that's top and bottom. And on larger devices, this figure would be 20. So, and I'm also going to give it full width. In here, I'm just going to set up another container, and this would essentially be a grid view. So I'll just say grid. So on smaller devices, it's all going to appear in one column, and on medium devices, ideally it would appear on 2 columns. So I'm just going to specify 2 columns, and then on larger devices, it's going to be 3 or 4 columns. I'm just going to set this to 3 for now. I'm also going to give this full width, and specify divide x 0 on smaller devices, and on larger devices, I'll just specify divide x. And yeah, just you're going to see this in action in a bit. So moving forward, I'm also going to do the same thing for the y-axis. So on smaller devices, it's just going to be divide y, and medium devices and above, it's just going to be divide y 0, and I'm essentially going to style the first object and give it a border of 2. We'll see this in a bit. And on larger devices, we're going to simply specify border none on larger devices. And the next thing we want to do is divide gray 900. I think I'm going to specify this as well. If this breaks, I would just ideally, we could remove it. And now we have our component somewhere around here. So let's just pass a bunch of stuff into it. And now we're going to start going over the perks. And the perks are essentially simple steps that you can take. You can find them in the constants folder here, and this is just the data that we're going to be essentially mapping over and rendering in our SaaS application. So I'm just going to go ahead and import it from constants, and yeah, we have it right here. And now we're just going to say perks.map, and we're going to extract every instance of it in the array. And this is what we'll be returning. This would essentially be a div, and the key would be the title of the perk. So essentially just some text. Then the class name, just going to specify this. Items would be starts this time. I'll give it padding on the x-axis of 4. I think 4 should do. And on medium devices, this number would be 6. And then on larger devices, say 8. And then I'm simply just going to do the same for the y-axis. So I don't think we should worry much about larger devices for this. So I'm just going to skip medium devices and just do 8 on larger devices. Oh, this should be starting on the y-axis. And then in here, we're just going to do some more stuff, and we're going to open another container again. And in here, we're just going to specify some styling. And in here, we have perk dot icon. And we're just going to style it and simply just pass it a width and a height. So now we have our icon and then width and height. And now you can see all of the icons from these perks, as well as some of the styling that we gave to our container before. Now we're just going to go ahead and render the actual text. And that's going to be in a h3 tag. I'll do this and make this text G. Font should be medium, ideally, because semi-bold would be too bold. I think semi-bold would be too bold. And in here, we're just going to have the title. Yep. I think it's starting to come alive. And below this, we're just going to have oh, I made a mistake there. We're just going to have a P tag here, and this would be text muted foreground, margin top of 8 pixels. That's to align text to the start. And ideally, I'm just going to align the text to the start as well on larger devices. But if we need to change that, we'll just go ahead and do that. And in here, we're going to render the information. Yep. And now we can see that everything is coming together. This is fully mobile responsive, as you can see. And now even on mobile devices, it works beautifully. On tablets, it also works wonderfully. And yeah, we have our how it works section. The next thing we want to do is add some kind of features section, and I think I'll just call it features. Really, I wanted to do that here, but you know, I think the design had a how it works section before the features section. So I think this text is a bit you know, squished, so I'm just going to do this, and that should, you know, kind of free it up a bit. But now I don't like this, so I'll go back to medium, and quite frankly, I'm just going to shorten the text in 3 steps. Okay, cool. This looks better, even though I think I prefer this. So I'm just going to okay. I think I was just overthinking it. So the next thing we want to do is build out that feature screen. I think we're done with this. So I'm just going to close this out, and I'm just going to set up a features component. I'll copy this, and then I'll go create the file in here. And then I'll come back here and simply import it. So now we have our next component, which is features. So moving forward, we are going to use our wrapper again in the features component, and I'll just import it, pass it the class name. I think this is pretty much identical to the how it works, but I think there's some minor changes. So yeah, I think there's something I'd like to set up ideally, and it's essentially I'm just going to go ahead and build, and then I'll just show you. First would be I'll just set up a div, and then I'll style it. I think this is going to be a cool feature to set up. So, yep, this is just a background. I think I'm going to create the second container now. And this would essentially be, let me just do it. Specify a class name. So Indigo 600 is just a special color that I set up for you. And it's all in the starter file. Rounded for, I think the same amount of blur would work. Hidden, block on larger devices, absolute, bottom 0. This just aligns it to the very bottom of the screen. And this just gives it, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. This is just the height and the width. This is the border radius, and this is the blur. And we're going to see all of that in a bit. It's going to make sense very quickly. Just let's just keep building. So I'm going to use my trusty container component here. And in here, I'm just going to specify div max width medium. I think I made a mistake. Margin on the x-axis of auto. I'll align this to the start on smaller devices and to the center on larger devices. So that's all I'm going to do. And in here, I'm going to use the section badge component again, but this time I'm just going to pass it a title of features. And now we have our features bit here. The next thing I'm going to do is set up a H2 tag, and this is just kind of going to be the title. So it's a big text, 3XL, and on larger devices, this would be 4XL. On much larger devices, ideally, I'm just going to set it to 4XL for now. And, if that needs to change, we'll just go ahead and change it. In here, I'm just going to say discover our powerful features. I think I need to add some kind of padding here. Oh, I made a mistake here. Then I'm just going to give it some margin above, and I'll just make this semi-bold. Yeah, I think this looks a lot better. I'm just going to add a p tag like before, and it's going to be the same color, and then it's going to have a margin. I don't want to forget that again. And in here, we're just going to say some text. Yep. Oh, I didn't spell range correctly. So now we have our text, and I'm just going to move down a bit and set up yet another container. In this container, we're going to essentially be going over the features that we have here. Essentially, we're just going to be going over these the same way that we went over these and rendered them beautifully in the application back here. So we're just going to go ahead and do something very similar. So, yep, moving forward, I'm going to create a container, and this is going to be flex. I'll pass it this, align items to the center, justify contents to the center, padding on the y-axis of 10, and on larger devices, it should be 20. I'm just going to use 20, and I'll pass it full width. In here, I'm going to create another container, and this would essentially be the grid container that carries everything. So it's going to have one column on smaller devices, and on larger or medium devices, it's going to have 2 columns. And then on larger devices, it's going to have 3 columns. And yeah, so far so good. Now we're going to finally go ahead and map. So I'll just import the features, and it's coming from context, from constants. So I'm just going to call this feature, and now we're accessing every item within the features array as we are mapping. And yeah, I'm just going to push ahead. So in here we have a div, and the key here would ideally, since we're mapping, we need to specify a key. I'm just going to say feature.name. Okay, there's nothing in my container yet. So I'm just going to pass this some styling. And then inside of here, I'm going to specify another div. This would be simple, really. I just want to align everything to the center. And this is just going to be the icon. And yep, essentially it's just an icon, and it's fetching this icon from our SVG icons that we set up before. Now I'm just going to style it, and I'm just going to give it a width and a height, ideally, just so it doesn't break. And now we have our icons here, but it's still kind of packed together, and this is because we've not added anything else. But let's go ahead and do that right now. So the next thing we want to do now that we have our icon is just specify h3 tag and syntax. Font is going to be medium, and I'm just going to give it a margin on the top of 4, and this would house the feature title. So as you can see, it's coming together bit by bit. The last thing I'm going to do is set up a p tag, and this would essentially just carry the information. So yeah, I'm just going to style this again. Literally forgot what I wanted to do. Now we can see that we have all of our code here. I think I'll just align this to the start. Yeah, makes it look a lot better. And I think we're missing some kind of gap within our component. I think I'll just pass this a gap of 8, and that should space things out. So yeah, give or take, this is done. And now we have our beautiful features page. So we have our hero section, we now have the how it works page, and now we have our features page. And as you can see, everything is fully mobile responsive. And I think this looks great so far. I think this looks beautiful so far. There's one more thing that we want to add to the application or to this feature screen, and that's an image. And I'm just going to show you that in a bit. So how we're going to add it is essentially we'll need another container. And in this container, I'm just going to specify or create a container, just a div. And in this div, I'm just going to style it and say flex item center, justify center. This was actually an afterthought. I didn't want to add it, but yeah, I think I should. It was in the original design, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it. And essentially, it's an icon, and I'm going to import my icon, and this would be icons.feature. I'm also going to give it some kind of styling, and I'll specify a class name. I'll specify a class name. Okay, that does end it. So ideally, we're just going to specify a class name width of auto, and the height should be 80. Yep. And now we have this beautiful image here that is also mobile responsive along with the rest of the application. And yeah, I love this so much. I just didn't want to miss it. So yeah, now we're done with this section, and we can move on to the next section, and that would be a pricings page. So I'm just going to write this out. I'll copy it, and I don't think we need this anymore. I'll just come in here and create a new component, call this pricing. I'll just rename this, and then I'm going to import it here. So now we have our pricing component, and without wasting any time, we're just going to jump into it. I think we all know that we're always going to be starting with the wrapper now. So yeah, to be another wrapper, and flex call, align items, center, justify content to the center as well. We're just going to give it a padding y-axis of 12, and position is going to be relative. And if we do this, yep, I think it reflected. So there should be some kind of padding here. I'll just use this to check. Yeah, we can see that there's some padding on the top and bottom. And yep, let's keep going. In here, we're going to have a container, and it's going to be hidden on mobile devices, but on tablets and larger, it's going to be block. It's going to be absolute, and you're going to see this in a bit. 1/3. Just going to give this width, and I meant to say 72. So width and height, and the background is just going to be blue. It's going to be this, and we're essentially just building out, the top area. I'll close this out. Yeah, this would essentially just be some kind of a background color that you're going to see in a bit. I'm going to set this to 10 RAM, and yep, think we're done. I don't think there's any need for this. I'll just close it like this. And once I save it, I wonder what happened. Okay, here it is. So it was hidden on smaller devices, but here we have it. It's this gradient right here. So yeah, let's keep going. I think it still shows up here. So now we're going to use our first container, and in here, just going to specify max width of medium. Oh, I didn't import the container, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Should solve that. Max width, specify the margin on the x-axis. Just going to align all the text to the start, and on larger devices, text center. Now we're going to have our section badge, and this is just going to have a title is just going to say pricing, really, or our prices. But I think ideally, I think pricing is cool. So I'm just going to specify. Actually, I think I'm just going to come in here and copy it, because it's really the same thing. So I'll close this out. I'll come back here, paste it, and then I'm just going to change the text. This should do it. And yeah. Okay, now we have our text, and I think the styling is cool. I'll just save this, and yeah, I think it's beautiful. Yeah, I didn't know how that was going to turn out since I copied it from somewhere else. But yeah, we have our text, and if you take a look at this, everything just, transitions into place, and that's one of the beautiful things about using the wrapper and container components. It just gives us access to these beautiful animations, everywhere and anywhere, really. So we're going to carry on, and yeah, I'll set up another container. And in this container, I'm actually going to, I think I should style this container. Yeah, I think I should do that. But ideally, it's just going to be flex, basic stuff. Then we'll have a div here, and inside of here, we're just going to create some kind of grid container. It's just going to have one column on mobile devices. On tablets, it's just going to have two, and on larger devices, it's just going to have three. So pretty much simple stuff so far. I'm just going to pass this a gap and give it full width, obviously. So I'm just going to ideally we could copy this from a different screen, but I'm just going to type them out. This just allows the components, to wrap and, just go to the next line instead of breaking into the screen and ruining the experience on the website. So yeah, I'll save this. Okay, no errors so far. Now I'm just going to go ahead and start mapping over the pricing that we have. And we have the pricing in our constants folder, so you don't need to worry about it. We just have it here, and we're going to be mapping all over all of these pricing plans. So yeah, let's jump into it. So pricing cards dot map. I'm just going to call this card, and then oh, we need to return something here. So let's carry on. So ideally, I'm just going to use a card component, and you should also have this, and this should have a key, and that's just going to be the title. Then we're going to have a class name, and we're going to use our CN functionality from our lib, and we're just going to use that and join some styles. Oh, I thought I put everything in a string. Should fix that. Border neutral 700, and then I'm just going to this should be card dot title. So if the title is so essentially what I want to do is make it so that the one in the center has some kind of difference. style, and the one in the center is the pro plan, ideally, because we have 1, 2, 3 plans. So we want to kind of give the pro plan a different styling because it's the cheapest paid one. So this is just a visual cue, and I believe it's going to prompt businesses to want to move for that one, since it's a very easy entry point for businesses. And yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So what I'm going to do is take this, and I'm just going to say if the title is pro, then I'm going to do something else. And just going to add these styles. Okay. Yeah, we fixed that. So really, we just want to give the one in the center a different style. And this is going to be the pro plan right here. So yeah, let's go ahead and finish this out. I'm just going to specify a card header, and this is coming from our UI folder. I'll give this some styling. Border B, and this. In here, we're going to have a span, and this is just going to say, this is just going to carry the title. Yep. So we're making progress. And the next thing we're going to do is set up a title here, and we're going to use our CN helper function again. And that's just going to, I'm just simply going to copy this. So if this is the case, so if it's not equal to pro, so if it's not the second one, then I'm just going to and all this is going to do really is highlight the price in a different color, and you're going to see that in a bit. Then I'm just going to add a card description. So in case you're wondering where, I'm bringing all of these components from, they're all in the starter repository. You can check the beginning of the video. I just walk you through how to clone it and get set up, but all of this is there. All of these components are in that repository. So yeah, moving forward, I'm going to use, I think I'm just going to keep this blank for now and just render the description here. And once we save it, now we can see the difference in the styling. We can see that this is white, whereas these are gray, and the styling is just different. So let's just keep going, and we'll figure it out. So under the card description, we're going to come out of the card header, and now we're going to create the card content. And I'm just going to give this some minor styling, padding top of 6, and this. So now we're in business. So we're moving forward, and now I'm just going to map over these features here, and just render each and every one of these features, and I'll show you in a bit. So that's going to be card.features.map. And I'm just going to return the div. This ideally would have a key of, the key would be the feature itself, because the feature is a string and each of them are kind of unique, so no one is repeated. So I think this is safe. So I'm going to go ahead and style this as well, and I'll just flex item center gap 2. I think we'll start with this and kind of change it if we need it. We're going to use this icon from Lucid and really just style it. So and then below this, we're going to have p tag that just, this p tag is simply going to carry the feature. So now we have all of these. We have our plans, and I think it looks good so far. So far, so good. The last thing we want to do, I think this would be the last, would be to add some kind of, just using the card footer component. I'm going to style it and do this just so it stays on the bottom. It's going to use a link, and I'm just going to set the href for now to this, and I'll pass it the class name. I'm going to be using our helper functions here, and I'll just start with this. So full width, text in the center, so we have this now. I'm just going to add a comma, and if the title is not pro, so if it's not our center component, I'm just going to pass background or foreground and just essentially a different text color. And inside of this link, I'm just going to render the button text. So essentially we're creating we're creating a kind of like a CTA button. And yeah, now you see it. So now, as we can see, I think we're done with this, and we can see that it is fully responsive. We can see both of our gradients. There's this one here and there's this one here. It's fully responsive. This is for mobile devices. You can see how it looks. I think we've done a great job so far. But yeah, moving on. The next thing that we're going to be building is essentially the testimonials section. And yeah, I think that bit is going to be fun. Let's get to it. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to come in here, and essentially the testimonials would be some kind of, it would be a bento card component. And there's this really cool feature that I love where if you hover over one, it just kind of stops and you can read it. So yeah, let's go ahead and build that. So I'll create testimonials.tsx. My shortcuts aren't working. I'll reload this. That's odd. Oh, I think that's because I did this. I'm just going to fix it, and my shortcut should work now. Yep. Let's make this capital T, and then I'm going to come in here and I'll just import it. Yep. So first thing we're going to have, obviously at this point, is a wrapper, and I'm just going to go ahead and style it. This is going to be flex call, item center, justify is also going to be center. Going to give it a padding Y of 12, and relative. We've been using these same styles, over and over again. So you could really just go and copy them. That would be cool. The next thing we want to do is set up just another background gradient, and it's just going to be a div. It's going to be hidden on medium devices. It's going to be visible. Going to specify this. It's just going to be negative that, and then I'm just going to give it some styling again. I think we've done all of this before, but I'm too lazy to go grab it. So I'll just quickly type it out just so you can see as well. So here we go. And this is our gradient right here. You can see that there's these two from the pricing, and now more recently we have this, and this is for the testimonials, and you're going to see it in a bit. So we'll keep moving forward. I'm going to have container. Inside of this container, I'm just going to have a div. And in here, I'm just going to have a section badge, and that's just going to say, it could say testimonials, it could say what our users are saying. I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to pass the title as testimonials. Yep, now we have it. But I think testimonials is, I think it's a mouthful. I'm just going to do our customers. That should be much better. And all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to a different component and copy this, and then I'll bring it back here, And then below the section badge, I'm just going to add it. And then I'm going to change the text to say what people are saying. And I'm just going to say, and ideally this should work. Oh, I made a mistake here. Should be what people are saying. So now we have our title and our small subtitle. And now we're going to go ahead and do some serious business. So I'm just going to set up a container, and inside of this, I'll have a div. It's just going to be so this is going to be the container for some of the stuff we're going to do. This is going to be relative, flex. So it's going to take the full height of the parent and the full width of the parent. It's going to be flex column, item center, justify center. Overflow would ideally be hidden here, and specify this padding on the y-axis of 10. Now I'm going to use this special component from shadcdn, and just going to pass this, and I'll pass class names. And this ideally is just going to specify a few things that we're going to need. This is just going to specify a few things, and you see it in action in a bit. So inside of this component, this is going to take children. So we want to, I think I mentioned before that it's going to be 2 rows. So yeah, let's create those rows. So ideally, we're going to be mapping over a bunch of testimonials that we have in our index folder, and here they are. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 bento cards, and actually, oh, I think I was looking at the wrong data. So it's here. So now we're going to be mapping over the reviews, and we're just going to create 2 rows out of this. And here's how we're going to do that. So in here, I'm just going to say the first row is going to be, didn't import that. So we're just going to slice the reviews array by this. So this just creates 2 rows, and just going to do this. We're going to see this in action very quickly. I think this bit is going to be cool. So this just essentially divides the reviews array in half, and the first one is just going to be the first half. The second bit is just going to be the second half, and then it's going to move in opposite directions, and we're going to see that in a bit. I'm actually excited about this particular feature on the low, but yeah, let's look at it. So we're coming back here, and in here we are just going to map over the first row. So this is going to be first row dot map, This would ideally be a review. So just going to render a figure, and now we're going to do this. We're going to use our CN helper function, and all right, so I think I'm just going to specify cursor pointer. Overflow is going to be hidden. Give this some border radius and some padding, ideally. So hopefully all of that is okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is just specify the border. Just going to specify a background color, and all right, if this breaks, we're going to know why, I guess. So, let's keep it moving. So there's the figure, and inside of this, I'm just going to have a div. It's going to be flex row. Item is going to be center, and the gap is just going to be 2. Inside of here, we're going to have some kind of user icon. I know I had that. So this is just from Lucid. So yeah, I'll just pass it some styling, and now we can see that we have a scrolling container right here that is scrolling on its own. And if you hover over it here, it just stops. So let's go ahead and finish this up, and we can see the full experience. So the next thing I want to do is set up another div. And in here, I'm just going to have just a caption. So it's just going to have these, and inside of this is going to be our review name. Yep. And now I think that's working. The next thing we want to do is p tag, and this would just carry the username and anything else. So in here, we simply want to pass the username, and now we can see that there's a username for everyone. There's Alice, Charles. Everyone has a username now, and it's all coming from this bit of data right here. So moving forward, So I'm just going to add a block quote, and inside of this, so inside of this, I'm just going to have, yep, I think this is working now. So the next thing we want to do is really do the same thing, but for the second row. And ideally, I'm just going to copy this, just going to duplicate it, and the styling is going to be different. First, this is going to be second row dot map, and essentially the only difference is that this is just going to be in reverse. So, yep, here we go. Now we have our first row and our second row, and you can see that it is actually different people doing all of this. It's different people, and that's because we split our original array into two, and we're just creating copies of that array and using it to render this beautiful feature. I love this so much, man. So the last thing that we are going to do here is add just some effects, and this is really just going to be at the bottom here. I'm just going to paste that in, and as you can see, it blurs out the corners right here, and I think it just makes it a lot more dramatic. I just love that it makes it more dramatic. So it just blurs out the edges, and it just allows things to be the way they are. So if you refresh, you get this beautiful animation, and you get all of this movement and this interaction. I would say this is my best part of the website so far. I think this is my best part of the landing page. So yeah, I think we have this now. I would say this is done. Yeah, I think we're done with this. So the next thing that we're going to build would just be the newsletter. And I think that's also a very interesting part. So let's get to it. Yeah, I think I'm going to copy this out first because I will need it. I'm going to come up here and create the newsletter component. I'll close this out for now. And then I'm going to come in here in components, newsletter. This should ideally be lowercase. Okay, so I'm simply going to come in here and import it. That breaks. If we save this, that should work. Now we have our newsletter components here. I said I was going to copy this, but I forgot. So I'm just going to come back in here and I'll grab this. And then in here, I'm going to replace this div with this and also this. And then I'll import it, and that should solve all the problems. All right, we're moving forward. Next thing is going to be container, and this is a different component. And ideally, what we're trying to build as a header for this would be some kind of lamp. I think we're going to see that animation in a bit. I think that's a beautiful animation as well. So first thing I'm going to do is create a container here. And inside of this container, I'm just going to pass some styles. And I think this code also exists here. I'll just take this and then, modify it as I go. So we're inside of here. I'll just paste it. I don't think we're going to be needing a section badge for this. For this, just going to pass all of this. And these are just basic styles, I guess. I think this should work. AI powered, fully automated team workflow. Okay, this should do it. This should do it. And then below this, I'm going to add a button. And in this button, I think just the variant should be white. Variant would be white, and the class name is just going to, I think this is all it would need. And then I'm just going to pass this prop. And here we have a link. And ideally, this is essentially a CTA button, and it would essentially take users to the sign-in page. But right now, I don't think that's part of the scope of this video. So yeah, probably in the next video, we can do that. So get started for free. And I think I'm just going to drop this. Just going to grab this icon. I think that was my voice to speech. So yeah, I'm just going to style this and just keep things simple. So I don't know what's happened, but I'm just going to restart my server. Hopefully that fixes it. Okay, and here we have it. So as you can see, I think this is beautiful. I think we forgot this here. And that should power up the button. Yeah, now we have it. And now you can see that I think this text is finicky. I'm just going to add a break tag here. And does that fix it? All right. So I think I had some trouble because I renamed my file, but I think that's fixed now. So now we have our lamp container component, and it just lets us cast this beautiful light over the main text, and this is how it looks. And yeah, I'm a fan, but we have to finish, so let's just keep going. So we have our lamp container, we have our container. The next thing we want to set up ideally would be another container. And that's just going to allow us to specify a bit of stuff for the form that we're building and whatnot. So I'm just going to specify container, pass this a class name, relative, and a mighty Z index. So in here, I'm just going to have another container, just says flex, align item center, justify content center. It's going to take full width and this. Now, inside of this, I'm going to set up another one, and that would be and that would ideally be so I'm just going ahead to style this, and so quite frankly, these are a lot of styles. So I think I'm just going to copy them and paste them in like so. All right, so that's that. Now we're going to have another component or another div with, and I think this is just going to carry our main title and body, and should be flex column, item start, gap 4, and this is going to take full width. Just save this for formatting. Okay. Okay, cool. Um, the next thing I'm going to do is come back to one of these components and kind of grab this just so I don't waste any time. So, just going to say, so now we have this, and I'm just going to save it. And now we have this fine bit here, but I think the styling is off. I literally just lifted this from somewhere else. I don't think the text should be this big. All right, I think this is much better. So, yep, let's go ahead, try to finish this all up. So the next thing we want to do is ideally just set up a new container for something else. So I'm just going to say item starts. All right. So, yep, here we are. I've typed this all out. Now, inside of here, we're going to have a form, and we don't need to import that. Just going to specify an action, and the action is just going to be this. So now we're styling the form, and I'm just going to copy these and just drop them in here for the styles. I'm sorry, for the form. And now inside of the form, we just have an input. And for this input, now it's required. And so I'm typing nonsense. Okay, so the input field is required, and type is going to be this. Just going to fix that. All right, so now we have this really nice fancy button. So yeah, moving forward. So below the form, ideally we would like to have a button, and so yeah, this button is going to be variant of secondary, and I think I've styled it. No, I haven't. That would have caused problems for me later down the line. So for the class name, all right, so here we have it. And in this button, we're just going to say subscribe. I think there's a minor inconsistency here. Oh, I forgot to style the input, so I think that was why things were out of place. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I think I have those styles from before, so I'm just going to come in here and paste them. So now you can see that we now kind of have Okay, so now you can see that we have all of this, and now this is the newsletter component. So to clean things up, I think there's something I forgot. Not quite sure. Okay, I think this would be necessary. So just adding this and letting them know that they're subscribing to some kind of plan or service. And I think with that, the newsletter bit is done. And here we have it. You can see this beautiful animation as well as the slide up animations. And yeah, yeah, I think this is great. Just let me know what you think and let's get going. So I'll open up this file here. The footer file is in the navigation folder under components. So navigation, footer, you come in here and let's get to work. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this footer first. And I'm just going to create some kind of data structure to hold all of the footer links. When I built this initially, I kind of listed out everything, and I don't think that's the most performant way because it just makes the code very long. So really building it again, I think this would be better. So I'm just going to show you. So I'll create this would be an array of footer links, and in here we'd have objects. I'm just going to say title, and this would be the title of the section, and then we'd have an array of links, and then the links would be an array for the product. Let's say features, have pricing, we'd have testimonials, and we'd have integration. So this is for one, and this we're just going to duplicate this for multiple places, and I'm just going to type all this out and we'll come back to it once I'm done. All right, now I'm done, and we can go ahead and finish building our footer. But to make things cleaner, I'm just going to copy this and go to the constants, kind of just put it in here, save that to format it, and then I'll close this, and then I'm going to just import it. Just going to import it, and now we have this array right here in our footer component. So we're going to begin, and this is where we'll start. I'll just start by styling this flex call. This is going to be relative. Items are going to be aligned to the center. They'll also be justified to the center. This is going to have a border top. Should be a hyphen here. Okay, and moving forward, this will have a padding top of 16. That should be like 64 pixels ish, and the padding bottom of 8, padding on the x-axis of 6, and on larger devices that's going to be 8. We could change this if if it's not convenient, I guess. But we'll just give it full width also and max width of, I think I did 5XL initially. I'll do 6XL and we'll adjust if that's not cool. Margin on the x-axis of auto, and on larger devices, I forgot this. I'll just come back here and do it. On larger devices, this is going to be 32. Yep. All right. So far, so good. Yep. In here, ideally, I just like to have some kind of background for larger devices. So how do I do this? Okay. All right. So I'll just call this a div. There's not going to be anything in here. So just kind of close it like this. And in here, it's going to be hidden. On larger devices, it's going to be display block. This is going to be absolute. It's going to have, I think I've done this in a previous component, but let's just go ahead and do it. Let's just go ahead and do it. It's essentially one of the modals from, one of the gradients from before, and I really like the touch that it adds to the application. So yep. So this is rounded full. All right, see how this looks now. So it's right here, but it might not be very visible, but the gradient is right there. I'm going to add another one on the left side of the screen, and I'll just duplicate this. And what needs to change? This would be left, and then I'm just going to pass this bottom 0. Yep, and now we have the second one right here. I'm just going to look around if there's anything else that needs to change. I think this is okay. So we can move forward now. And next thing we want to do is give some space and create another div container. This would be a grid. I know I like Flexbox, but can't deny how useful grids would be in this case. So gap 8 on larger devices, this would have 3 columns, if I'm correct. All right. Hopefully I'm not missing anything here. Save this, and okay, TypeScript isn't angry. I'll add another div container here, and in here I'm just going to flex call item start, justify start. On medium devices, this is going to have a max width of, I think, 2000 pixels. Should be okay. Make that 200. I think that was a mistake. So in here, I'm going to open up, I'm going to open up another div container, and this is just going to be the logo. And I'm just going to style it with flex and item start. And in here, we're going to use the logo that we used previously in the navbar. It's going to be icons.logo, and I'll just give it a height and width. H7, W7. And we should have our logo right here. And all of this is fully responsive, as you can see. The max width is give or take the same as the newsletter component. So here we have our logo, and let's keep pushing. Next thing I'm going to do is essentially add some kind of text. Some kind of text. And I'll just do this in a p tag. Text muted foreground, margin top of 4. Text is going to be small, and it's going to be aligned to the left. Oh, I didn't add the text. So I'm just going to, I'll just think up something on the fly here, and this should do it. And now we have this cool piece of text here. All right. The next thing we're going to do is, I like to do this myself, but yeah, let me show you. It's essentially just going to be a tag, and I just like to do this, or maybe I shouldn't do it. You know what? I'm just going to skip it. I essentially just wanted to add made by Oliver, or you could also change it to your name, but you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. So it's going to have margin top of 4, text neutral 200. Text is also going to be small. It's also going to be flex, and item is going to be aligned to the center. And in here, we're just going to say, so we do this and we say made with love, but I'm going to style this heart, and I'll just pass it a width of 3.5, height of the same, margin left of 1 for some space away from the text. Fill of our primary color should be a blue. Text primary as well. So yeah, made with love, and here we have it right here. So I could add this to say and this is just going to be an MX. So you could do this ideally, but I mean, I'll just leave this here for now. And yeah, let's move on to the rest of the video. Now we're going to actually begin rendering the footer links, and I can close this out now. I can close this out because we're not going to be needing it right now. So I'm just trying to think of how best to render the array that we created earlier. So I'll start with a div container and grid. Grid calls 4 because I think there were 4 product integrations, resources, and company. So there's 4 of them. So they're all each going to be in one column. So yeah. So we'll align them in 4 columns. Pass the gap of 8 and margin top 16 on larger devices. It's going to have call span 2. All right, let's get to it. If it breaks, we're just going to fix it. So footer links dot map section and index. So we're just going to return another div container, but in here it's just going to have a key just so that every container is, identified. So we're going to pass the index of this particular item in the array. So it's a footer link. We're mapping over every section in this array, and each of them have an index. This is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So we're passing that index as its key. So yeah, now we're going to just style it and have something interesting in mind. So what this is going to look like would be this. So if the index is an odd number, I'm just going to use this style. All right, and we're going to see this in action in a bit. So okay, for the rest of this, this should be grid. So in here we'll have another div container. I'm not going to style that just yet because I'd like to see how it looks. And inside of here, we're going to have h3 tag. I'll just text base, font medium, and this is going to be white. So in here is going to be title. I'll save this. And now we can see that we have all of our titles right here. If I expand this now on larger devices, you can see what it looks like. So we have all of the sections right there. So I will bring this back. This should be about the size of a tablet. So that this is how it's going to look on tablets. So moving forward to the rest of the links, I'll use a list in here and I'll style this margin top of 4. Text is going to be small, and that's going to be the color of the text. And in here, we're just going to map over those links. So link and index once again. Now we have an li. Oh. So list item, and the key, just like div before, is going to be the index, just so TypeScript doesn't throw any errors. So, yep, moving forward to style it, we'll do something similar. And how do I do this? So I think I used the index before. I'm going to use that again. So if the index is greater than 0, then we're going to give it a margin top of 2. Otherwise, it won't have that. Should be a question mark here. Okay, then moving forward in here, we'll use the link tag from next link. And this is going to have a href. For now, we'll just keep it like this for now, and we'll style it. This is going to have a different color on hover. And in here, we're just going to have that link. And now you can see that we have all of our links. And if you hover over them, then you have this really cool effect. And you can see that the transition is smooth. And that just allows us to, that's what this bit allows us to do, as well as the ease in out bit. So yeah, this is mostly going to be our footer. I think there was something else that was needed. Some kind of incorporated text. I think I'll add that here. What's that? What that's going to look like is an empty 8. So let's have a border top. So we're almost done with this now. Just move this back. And then I'll just pass this full width. So in here, I'm just trying to render something like, you know, Nexa 2024, something like that. So I'll just use a p tag and text some. I'll give it this color. And in here, I'm just going to use this. I'll just get the current year. So I'll just save this. And now we have this really cool. I always like to add this because I see big tech corporations just add it. So I really like adding it whenever I'm building something for a SaaS project. So yeah, here we have it. And now we have our complete software as a service landing page for this AI startup. And now we have it. This is our hero section. I think it looks beautiful. This is the next section for the how it works section. These are the features. This is the pricing. This is the testimonial section. Guys, I think we've done a great work. So here we have all of these sections and everything is working as it should. All the transitions are really cool. And I think I love it. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and deploy all of this. So deploy the project. The first thing we want to do really is kind of check out to a new branch because now we're on Nexa starter. So this is the starter branch, and we've just built on the starter branch so far. So we don't want to push to that just so that every new person starting can still go there and get what they need. So I'm going to check out to a new branch. I use a shortcut for this, so just type it out. So I'll just check out to this new branch, and now we've switched to the new branch. I'm just going to add everything. I'm going to commit with a message, and the message is going to be complete and ready to deploy. It's going to be a big commit. 12 files changed. Okay, not that big. And now I'm just going to, I don't like to type all of this out, so I just like to push it and, it'll give me the message myself, and then I'll just type it and it goes. So now we have everything on GitHub on this branch. And what I'm going to do is come up here to Nexa and quickly make a PR to main just so that we are deploying the main branch. So I'll come to pull requests. I'm going to compare and create a new pull request. And it says it can't automatically merge. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why. I'll create the pull request anyway, and we'll see what that's about. So the Navbar is the problem. We're just going to go and resolve that. Quite frankly, I don't care what's in here, so I'm just going to come up to my Navbar in here. I'll just copy everything and paste it. I'm sorry, but I don't have the time for this, so I'll just paste it, commit it, and now we have a clean PR. I'm just going to merge it. So now we have on our main branch all of our latest changes. And next thing we want to do is come into Vercel. And these are all just a bunch of other hobby projects that I've done. I'll just create the project. I'll import Nexa. It's right there. Ideally, you'd need a Vercel account. It's free. So you could just go to vercel.com, create one for yourself, and you'd need to kind of give GitHub access to your repository. I've done that already. You can do that kind of. No, that's not it. But I've done that already, and yeah, you should see it. So I'll import this, and the project name is just going to be Nexa. We could really leave everything like this, and we'll just hit deploy. And now it's going to load, and we'll see how that goes. So the deployment is queued. It's currently running the build. It's cloning and installing dependencies, and then it's going to run npm run build, and we're just going to see all of that in a quick minute. So I'll let you know when that's done. Oh, and now we have problems because of this. Okay, this is a bunch. This is a bunch. I'm just going to copy this, and I'll come back to the code base. I'll come back to, I'll just come back to main, and I'll just pull the latest changes from main, and this should be okay. So the problem now is that we have a lot of apostrophes across the application, and Vercel doesn't like that. I can't believe I forgot that. So we just need to find them and change them. This is one. Didn't save that. This is one. This is another one. This is another one. All right, so far so good. We fixed this. We fixed this. I think there's one in testimonials as well. I think we got that. There's one in the input that says components UI input says an interface declaring no members is equivalent. I'm just going to go there and see what that's about. UI and input. So an interface declaring no members is equivalent to its super type. I'm not sure what this means. I mean, I know what it means. I'm going to hit ChatGPT. Okay, I think I'll just throw in a prop because I'm not trying to use a type. I think I'll just throw in prop here. Well, I'll just call this input class name. All right, that should fix that. The next one is in the marquee, and it says unexpected any. So if we come in here, it's on line 10, and it says unexpected any. This one I'll probably have to disable. I don't know. I'm just going to suppress the rule. So the next one is in the text area. I think I'll just copy this before I go there. So in the text area, we have this same element. That should fix that. All right, let's push again and see if that fixes it. And now this should trigger a rerun for this. I'll refresh and we'll see how that goes. I thought it should be automatic. Nah, I'll just go back and we have this here. There's no production domain, but it's building right now. So we'll go check this out. I think those worked. I think they worked. So yeah, now it's creating the build for us. And we have another error. This is probably from Shad CN. And we never used this. I'm just going to take this out, I guess. Shouldn't cause any errors for us because we're not using it anywhere. I don't recall using it anywhere in the application. Then let's push this again. this should trigger another deployment, and yeah, it's building again. I just didn't change the name of the commit. Should have done that. All right, so now the deployment is successful. That that took a lot of fighting, but we can come to this URL here, and we should see our Vercel application fully loaded. I'll just wait for that. Okay, so now the project is successfully deployed, and we just want to open it up in a new tab. I'll just open this up and then open the second URL. I don't know why this is taking a lot of time to load, but this one should be fine. Yeah. So now we have the website that we've built for our SaaS project, and we have the full software as a service experience, showing users what we're about, the value that we provide, and how we intend to provide it for them. You have the hero section, you have the how it works, features, everything that we built is now live on Vercel, and you can add this to your portfolios. You could add this to your CV, your resume. You could also add this to your applications. You could send this to friends, and you could really just use this to land your dream job or build your own SaaS product. And yeah, I think this is cool so far. There were some bugs and we fixed those, but yeah, I think this was a great experience. So just let me know what you want to see next. And yeah, I think that's it. All right. Take care, guys.